So, hello everyone, and welcome to our broadcast. And it's me, Jan, and my co-host here, Alex, or Alexandra McKenzie. And we have two very special guests today, and that's Sue Walker and her husband, Reverend White Otter, who is, just next to Sue over there. And those are quite fascinating people. So I think today is going to be, this show is going to be quite fascinating. And where should we start? I think you, Sue, and other, I would just like to mention that you guys have been in contact with the Ponti since it's been more than 8 years, right?
And since 9 years now.
2013, 8.5, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what people should know about you is that you created a website for them, which is officialfirstcontact.com.
Mm-hmm.
And there you put the Telepathy 101 primer, which
Mm-hmm.
was dictated by Denis, and you also wrote it. And then it was translated into many languages, later even into Czech. And also, even later, you published a book that is called Inviting ET.
Mm-hmm.
Both I and Sue, both I and Alex have read it, and it's a fantastic book, really, really insightful and really practical. And so my first question to you would be, it's been more than 8 years since you had your first contact with the Ponti. So how is it to look back at those 8 years being involved with this particular star nation?
It's been a fascinating, very fascinating journey, to be honest. Unexpected too, because when we were first contacted by this extraterrestrial nation from beneath the Sandia Mountain, it totally shocked me. I was not expecting it at all. Now, of all the places in the United States that people associate with extraterrestrials or UFOs, this state called New Mexico is one of the top places in the United States associated with UFO crashes, because the city of Roswell, which is actually a small city, it was a tiny town back in the year that the
46.
crash, 46, 47 to 51. There have actually been a number of UFO crashes in our state. But on top of that, we found from the local Native American population that they had a long, centuries, millennia old history of positive contact with a whole bunch of star nations, and that they consulted them and traded with them on a semi-regular basis. So when we came down, when Otter lived here and I came to visit his house for the first time, that was my first trip to the state of New Mexico. And I was here for 10 days-ish.
2 weeks.
Maybe 2 weeks, when we were sitting in the living room watching television one night, and I heard this male voice say something for the first time ever. It was extremely clear. It was definitely male. But what I couldn't understand at the time is it also had a location of coming from beneath the mountain, which, if I point this way, I'm pointing to the Sandia Mountain. This is out our picture window. And the mountain is 10 miles away, or 20 some kilometers. And I thought, how can I be hearing somebody from underneath the mountain? When we were talking to Tilcum for the first time, we didn't know his name. And so I gave him a nickname. The voice came from the Sandia Mountain. So I thought that sounded like a person's name as much as anything. And so I started calling him Sandia. And we didn't find out his real name for 2 months. And that started a journey for us that has included a greater understanding of what this star nation called the Ponti are all about and their culture. It also made us reflect on our own definition of what it's like to be human. Because one of the very first things that Sandia said was, we are human too. You are Earth human. We are Pantel human. But we are both humans in this galaxy. There are many variations of human that you will find in this area of our whole galaxy. And we're in the Orion and Sagittarius arm area of the galaxy. We have learned a great deal, not only about the Ponti, but a little bit about other star nations as well. And after we learned that Sandia's real name was Tilcum, he spelled it for us and told us that their language seldom uses vowels unless they are borrowed. And it just started us on this journey of learning culturally about them and honestly becoming friends. I can say now that we have some very good, very excellent extraterrestrial friends that have come to our house. We have seen them here. We have other people who visit us who have seen them here. We have had them show us their craft from a distance. I have been on board one of their craft and woke up remembering what the inside of it looked like. Both Otter and I, on different occasions, were taken beneath the mountain and have memories of the high arched stone ceilings in the hangar bay. So we have a lot of experiences. When we had been talking to Tilcum for almost 2 years, not quite. Tilcum contacted us one day and said, we hear Earth has something called social media. And I went, uh-oh, yeah. He said, would it be permitted for us to have an account we wish to teach? Okay. And I knew that that meant that I would have to be the typist or the translator. The Ponti have studied languages here on Earth for a long time. But you know from your experience, when you study a language out of a book, it's very different than the spoken language because it oftentimes does not include the current modern use of slang. So verbal language and spoken language are different than the book learning type of written language. And so the Ponti knew the written language. They wanted help translating their words and ideas and concepts into the common spoken language for the social media because they felt that it would reach people in a more relaxed, casual manner, like friends, instead of a formal manner, like politicians or dignitaries. And we had to agree. So that's how it started. It has changed us in ways that it merges with our daily living so thoroughly. It's hard to even know. Right now, we just call the Ponti our friends, to be honest. They are just good people. They've been honest with us. They've been direct with us. They've answered our questions. And we've learned an awful lot about them, and they've had a chance to learn more about us. Now, the thing that surprises us and delights us the most is when people read the Telepathy 101 primer around the world and practice inviting the Ponte from their local area to come visit them.
Or any other
yeah.
extraterrestrial entities.
Right. But the Ponte have provided evidence back. Mm-hmm. And seeing that evidence submitted back to us, whether it's a landing site, whether it's something that has changed in their home, whether they've gotten footprints on a window, anything that they have done to provide evidence back in the form of photos or videos. We have a number of videos that have the Ponte showing up with their craft up in the sky and blinking their lights on request by the person who invited them. And so all of that evidence and those videos you can see on officialfirstcontact.com website. There's a whole evidence page. Mm-hmm. And so that's been delightful to hear other people's stories and conversations about the Ponte and what they've been told. And now many people around the world who invite them are receiving several visits and having their own conversations back and forth with the Ponte and learning in specific areas of interest to them. And then they write back or call us and tell us about it, and we're thrilled. So it's not just I and Otter. It's a worldwide phenomenon now.
Yeah.
But the one thing that's different is now people who invite the Ponte recognize them by sight as Ponte, but also can recognize specific individuals by name. And so if someone invites a gal by the name of Druti, they would recognize her. Or if someone invites one of their pilots by the name of Radar, they recognize him. That's not happened before. Otter has a question.
No, I was going to talk about, or ask you to talk about the gal here who knew Druti before we did.
Oh, that's right. We had a woman here in Albuquerque who grew up here and raised her family
at the base of the mountain.
At the very base of the Sandia Mountain, contact us one day. And she said, I understand that you know about the extraterrestrials that are underneath the Sandia. And I said, yes. And she said, my friend told me you knew them by name. I said, yes. And then she proceeded to tell me her and her family's experience. They were visited in their home when they lived at the base of the mountain. But even more than that, when the woman who called us, whose name is Gloria
Hawker
is her last name. That's right. When Gloria moved from the base of the mountain 10 miles west to the other side of town, she had an accident and injured herself and was not able to get out of bed and take care of herself. And she had her helpers leave one day, so she was all alone in her house on the west side, sitting upright in her bed. And suddenly, in the daytime, not at night, in the daytime, the circle at the foot of her bed, the wall, dissolved in about an 8-foot circle, and it sparkled to her. And 5 Ponte walked through the wall, surrounded her bed, and started working on her. When Gloria told me this story, she talked about sensing both male and female people around her. And I said, would you like to see my pictures of them? and I can show you what they look like by name. And so as we were talking on the phone, I sent her an email, and when she opened up the email with Drudy's picture, she started to cry. And she repeated over and over, I know this woman. I know this woman. What is her name? Please, can I talk to her again? Please, could you tell her thank you for me? Please, could you have her come visit again? I owe her a great deal. And so that story came from a person who lived in this city and was introduced to the Ponte before we were.
20 years before we were.
This was in the 1970s and 80s. So more than 20 years, quite a bit before. So the Ponte have been here interacting with the locals for a pretty long time. And all of the local Native American tribes who live in this area, and I think there are 19 separate pueblos or towns, all of them have had interaction. We have friends who have stories about interaction over centuries of time. And
millennium.
Probably
Not
millennium.
yeah.
So we've learned from the local Native folks as well as the local Albuquerque folks valid confirmations about our experience with the Ponte is not the first experience or the only experience. So
we just got suckered into putting it on the internet.
Yeah, we did. We agreed to volunteer to help them by putting whatever it is that they wanted to share onto the social media accounts. And so that's been our job since June of 2015, is accurately translating for them whatever it is that they need to say. And if we don't have a word in our language that is the equivalent of a word in their language, then we have to come up with a description to help them. And so occasionally you will see something typed out onto Twitter and parentheses, best translation. And that tells you we've had a discussion about concepts, words, ideas with them, because it's not one-on-one. But it's been a wonderful journey, let me tell you.
I can imagine. And so can I ask you, Sue, do you think or feel rather that you have connection with them on a soul level, that it was all planned before you were born?
I think the Ponte have had plans about all of this for a long time. And the reason that I say that is I remember being 6 years old and in first grade and having them come out of my closet into my bedroom when I was that young. I did not know their names. I did not know to call them Ponte then, but it was the same large gray head, large dark eyes, long skinny fingers. And I was frightened of them. And for a long, long time in my life, I could not sleep with my closet door open. I thought as a youngster, as a first grader, if I close the closet door, then they can't come in. Didn't quite work that way, but I do think that they have been watching me, and Otter believes that they've been watching him since we were quite young. And don't know what or why. On a soul level, boy, that's a really good question. I guess I would have to say probably, likely. So,
thank you. Thank you. So do I understand correctly that Pontes, they've been here for a very long time? The same group or someone else?
All right. So there are actually a number of both land-based and aquatic information stations here on Earth that are managed by the Ponti. The Ponti, amongst all the star nations that visit Earth, is considered fairly neutral. They get along with just about everybody. And they have been the information station managers for interstellar travelers coming to our planet to do research, to do exploring for many, many, many millennia. I asked them one time, how long have they been here? And they said that their own records go back 135,000 years at least. Mm-hmm. And then other star nations records that they adopted even before that. So kind of like when we make a new map of a place, we take an old map that somebody else has created and add to it.
Or embellish it.
Or embellish it. And they took the old information about Earth from star nations and added to it. But they themselves have been here since well before the beginning of
the last ice age.
The last ice age. So they were around when the age of large mammals was here, but not as far back as the dinosaurs.
Right. And so would you think that, can we say that maybe some genetic influence has been done by them on humans?
I would have to say, when we asked the Ponti about genetics, they laughed and they said, most star nations in the galaxy have mixed genetic heritage. Most all of them do. It is rare that you find a new unexplored planet or a sentient species or nation that does not. They told us very point blank that our genetics have been manipulated by several star nations, not just one. The greatest influence, or first and greatest influence, strongest influence, was by a group from the Orion constellation area that the Ponti call the EA, E-A. And that's all it is. It's just two vowels, E-A. The EA have elongated skulls, and you see their images in Egyptian hieroglyphics, as well as the elongated skulls from South America. The folks that were in the Middle East area did the greatest manipulation of genetics initially. The Ponti tell us that they themselves are a mix of different Zeta body type nations. And so one of the things that Teal'c told us is that many star nations consider merging genetics to have blended children of mixed parentage, a way of merging with a culture that's indigenous to a world and being able to be an intermediary go-between between world A and world B, so that the children of both worlds become the new translators. Mm-hmm. That is an accepted method of exploration for a long-term project that maintains on a world over many generations. So the star nations came here with the idea, some of the star nations came here with the idea that blending genetics is a normal part of exploration of a new world, because the blended child can better handle the differences of gravity, atmosphere, magnetics, water and food sources than somebody who is from a completely separate planet. So they do not see that blending of their genetics with our genetics as an issue, like we might see it as an issue. For us, it's new, it's different, it's startling, it's strange. It feels a little invasive to some people. And then we remind them that as Earth human explorers went out from wherever their country was to explore the rest of the world, what did they do? They had children with the locals and did the same thing. So we are no different in our behavior exploring as the Star Nations are. Make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It totally does. And just for the viewers, this is usually called that they are hybrids, but Sue and the Ponty prefer the term blended because it sounds much better.
Yes, in English, the word hybrid also can mean a car, an automobile that's partially electric and partially gasoline. And so when the Ponty
It's blended.
asked us to use the word blended, they said calling a person with mixed genetics a hybrid makes them sound too much like a car.
Yeah.
They think blended is a more polite term. I don't disagree.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there are so many stories with the Ponty, like from your area, but there are also many stories from around the world, and that's thanks to the Telepathy 101. That's a manual that Denis they dictated to you, and it was later translated into many languages. And for those who are interested, as you said, there are some examples maybe in the evidence at the official First Contact website, but also there's a project that's called the Close Encounters of the Pontel Kind.
Yes.
So there are 6 episodes right now, and there are some quite really uncommon stories.
Amusing stories. When the Ponty visit people here on Earth, it's not always straight, serious. They make mistakes. They get frightened or startled. They say or do unexpected things. And so the Close Encounters of the Pontel Kind YouTube channel was put together by a man from Canada who had a number of repeat visits, and a man from Australia who had a number of repeat visits. And they needed an illustrator, and that's where Jan stepped in and became the third individual to assist with putting those stories, those amusing stories, those unique, unusual, strange stories out onto the internet. And they did it because the Ponty wanted Earth humans like you and I to be less frightened of the idea of inviting them.
Yeah.
The Ponty have a sense of humor, very similar to ours. And so
A little more British.
well, it could be. They wanted people to know that they are as fun and funny as we can be. And they came to show us what they meant. So we've had them make mistakes like accidentally tip things over or break things. We've had individuals wake up to strange smells from strange places. We've had all kinds of unusual stories, real true stories from those who received visits by the Ponty and came back to tell the story of, you will never believe what happened to me. Ooh. And they tell the story in their own way, in their own words. And the two gentlemen from Canada and Australia share that and play hosts like you and Jan and Alex, you two are doing here. I recommend, if you have not seen and listened to some of those stories, that you do that. They're not long, but they give you a really good sense of the humorous people side of the Ponte, that they're just people.
And I think it also really nicely illustrates that this is a worldwide phenomenon, because I'm from Czech Republic, Europe, Kevin is from Canada, and Vuki is from Australia. So there we have it. And it's really true that this is about like lessening the fears. And I can attest that when I first came up, when I first saw your account, Sandia Wisdom, then initially I also knew CE5 from Dr. Greer and other stuff. So I tried CE5 meditations like a few times at that time, when I still had that kind of fear in myself, that I was worried, oh, what is going to happen? And I couldn't relax that into the meditation and stuff like that. But after like these, I don't know, it's maybe 4 years since I follow you on Twitter, that it really is much, it's almost not there, that fear of the ETs, because I really got to understand that they are just people like us. You know, people are good, people are bad, but they're just people.
It's been a fun journey to learn about all of their personality types. They have intellectuals, they have healers, they have jocks who do sports, they have mechanics and engineers who are all about inventing and putting things together and pulling things apart to see how they work. They have security people.
Zamboni.
Yeah, Zamboni, Lordy. That's a story. And so we've gotten to know all of these different aspects of their personality, because the staff of the Sandia Mountain is wide and varied, male and female, in what they're like inside and what they like to do when they're off duty. That's one of the biggest, most wonderful questions we've asked them is, what do you do for fun when you're not working? What do you do for fun? And that's what they like to learn about for us too. When we aren't at our jobs, what do we do for fun? That's what they want to know about. The music, the writing, the books, the sports, the things, the food, the things that we gravitate toward on the weekends or with our families or friends. What's that like? That's part of our culture. And they are cultural explorers. That's what they call themselves, cultural explorers. We might want to know about their technology. They want to know about our culture. So
isn't it quite interesting that it kind of shows the level of intelligence, intellect, and understanding on consciousness level, the human technology, but what is more important, perhaps learning about the culture, learning about the people, how they perceive what they do for fun. And so
it shows you their values.
Yes. And I have a question. So do they eat our food or they bring their food from somewhere else?
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both. If I had to say their favorite foods or the things that they commonly eat from Earth, they will sample most anything. Probably not ghost peppers or something very, very hot. And usually not alcohol. But other things, I can tell you that they have come to like Earth chocolate. That's a big one. They like to sample the sweet things. They have decided that United States pizza is a good thing. And as long as it doesn't have meat from four-footed animals or poultry on it, it's good. Their diet is a little bit of fish, but mostly fruits and vegetables.
They say pescatarian.
Pescatarian means we eat some fish. Of our foods here, the most comparable foods that they bring from home and earth foods, seaweed and dishes with seaweed in them is a big one for them. So are cabbage family things. So cooked cabbage or fried cabbage, that's to their liking too. So their diet is pretty simple. We've talked to them about sushi and things like that. But for the most part, if I had to say what percentage of their diet comes from here versus what they bring, it's mostly their food by 2/3 to 3/4, and maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of food acquired from here.
And so that they go back home quite a lot.
They can go back home, but it's hard on their bodies to go back and forth to the two environments. Once they're here, the most typical length of time they tell us is 20 years. That's how long they usually would have a period of time that to choose to stay here is 2 decades. If they stayed longer than that, it's harder and harder on their bodies without being in an environment that's completely climate controlled, including gravity.
Yeah. Okay. And do I understand correctly, they're living inside the mountains and they are nocturnal?
For the most part, they are nocturnal. They will always have someone at the information desk, daytime and nighttime, all the way around the clock, because interstellar visitors might show up at noon and they need to be able to answer questions. So there's always someone on duty. But for the most part, naturally, they are nocturnal. And that's a good thing because our sunlight is very hard on their sensitive eyes. You know, the big black eyes that you see, that's a second lens. It's like an eyelid. And so they can retract that eyelid. It actually retracts down into this corner of the eye. And beneath that dark lid that protects their eyes from our UV, beneath that dark lid, their eyes are big and beautiful colors. Beautiful. Blue, green, brown, gold, violet, and everything in between. And so we were requested to illustrate them both with and without the lenses covering their eyes so that Earth humans could see, gosh, you can look into their eyes just like they can look into our eyes. And that helps. Makes them seem a little more human to the people when they can see the iris part of the eye.
And talking about eyes, do they fall in love?
Oh, yeah.
So they experience love as we humans?
Mm-hmm. They believe in both love between people like you would have for a partner, but they also believe in unconditional love or agape love, like Christ-like love. Mm-hmm. So they have both concepts and understandings. And yes, they can fall in love. For the most part, they take one partner at a time instead of saying having 5 wives or 5 husbands. No, it's just one-on-one. That's easier. So
it's more socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So good questions. What else? What else would you like to know?
I got muted. I find interesting that they also share that there are also like LGBT people in the Ponty and in the whole universe. So that was kind of surprising fact for me, for instance.
When I asked them if there was in their culture the concept of heterosexuality to homosexuality, they looked confused, like, well, yeah, why? They were very curious as to the question. They said, almost all mammalian species are. Why? And I went, because in some cultures on Earth, it's accepted versus not accepted in their culture yet, depending on their history, their belief system, and their social norms. And they went, well, but love is love is love is love. What's the problem? And I couldn't answer that. I said, I'm not sure, but I know that this is the way that they originally grew up and passed this information down from their important people in their life, whether it was parents or clergy or politicians or whomever. Some people have laws that state that it's okay, and some people have laws on Earth that state it's not okay. And they went, that's really strange. So yes, there are a number of Ponty who would fall into closer to the gay spectrum, whether lesbian or gay. Some people fall in the middle and can go either way, and some people gravitate toward the opposite sex. And so there's just this natural mixture within their population. They don't even think twice about it. Doesn't matter to them. Love is love is love is love.
Yeah.
So that was a relief to have them explain that. If people here on Earth wish to speak with any of the folks beneath the mountain here that are gay, I would have them talk to Orth, who is their record keeper and assists their security chief. And I would have them talk to Nee, who is a gal who is the custodian in charge of some of the things that they collect.
Radar's room.
Specifically Radar's collection. Radar's closet, we tease him about.
And it's the entire room. You can't get in it.
You can now. Nee's had her hands in it.
Yeah.
But there are specific staff members that if they wish a visit from those staff members and want to talk to them about gay issues or the LGBT kind of community issues, they're happy to do that. They're delighted to be asked.
And so anyone can go and visit them under the mountain?
You can try, but to get in, you have to know where the entrances are. It is much more common for us to hear that the people that they regularly go see, the regular contactees, frequently about a year into their contact will write us one day or call us and say, I think I was in the mountain last night. Does it look like this inside? And then they would describe what they saw. And because Otter and I have the same images in our head, we can confirm, okay, if it's in the mountain, it looks like this. Well, that might be a part that we haven't been to, or you may have been someplace else. By the way, underground facilities are not just something that the Ponty does here. All of the star nations that come here have underground facilities, or most all of them that come here regularly have underground facilities.
Or undersea.
Or undersea, that's right. There are aquatic facilities under our oceans also.
And so did you manage, or were you invited to go on a ship or to visit their underground facility? And if so, were you there in your physical form, or were you there in your etheric or astral form?
Okay, fair question. I can't talk for Otter. I can tell you, I woke up on board a real ship and was there physically because I remember touching one of the crew members and remember what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember what the lighting looked like. I can remember what the floor was like. I remember the sensation of coming down a ramp and looking out a window. So I remember physically being on a ship very clearly. I have images in my head of the inside of the Sandia Mountain Station.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I was there physically as well. And the reason that I say that is because when I think about that memory, I have this very distinct smell that I don't have any other time.
Mm-hmm.
And smells are a real strong memory trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that if I was there in an etheric form or a dream state form, I may not have a smell. I can't tell you very many dreams I've ever had in my life where I remember the smell. So that's what makes me think it was much more real.
10 years ago, you saw me come off of
Yes, I did.
Spaceship, right?
When I first met Otter, the very first week that I met him,
Mm-hmm.
day 3 or 4, he had an encounter where he was picked up and taken on board a ship and brought back. And I saw him less than 20 minutes later.
After I'd been brought back.
For very first thing in the morning at sunrise. And he was walking around like a confused person. Let me tell you, he was not making sense. And as I talked to him, he was so confused that I said, "Are you okay?" And I was watching him very carefully to make sure that he wasn't having any kind of a strange medical episode. And I didn't know at the time that he was coming off of a ship. But he had been on board a ship, at least for a period of time, just before dawn. So that was different. I did not expect that either. Neither did he. So I can tell you that we have stories from delivery people and service people like repairmen here in New Mexico who have also either been under the mountain or been in the tunnel system or have delivered to the mountain. And so we had a story from an electrician who went out into the desert to meet his ride for a government contract that he had signed up to do some electrical work for. And this location in the desert had one van whose windows were all darkened. And they said, "Leave all of your tools. You cannot take anything with you at all, not even a cigarette lighter. You have everything that you need on location. And so leave your truck here. We will take you to where the job site is." They drove them around for an hour and a half. And then they drove them into the mountain and they dropped them off in the hangar bay. And this guy got out of this van with the windows darkened to the biggest underground airstrip he'd ever seen in his life.
Mm-hmm.
It was like several hundred feet tall and about 4 kilometers long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was huge, underground. And so he saw physically underground in the corner some of the Ponte's ships, skipper ships and other things. And he saw at a distance, not up close, but at a distance, some of the Ponte and was floored. We had another story by a delivery driver who usually delivered fruits and vegetables. Produce for a local chain here. And he got a government contract to deliver to a facility on the east side of the mountain. We drove up to this place, and all it was one metal barn and one house. And he went, "What am I doing with all this food?" And a man came out of the house and motioned him to back his truck into the metal barn. And he said, "Come with me, we'll do the paperwork in the house." They were in the house 10 minutes. When the driver got back out to his truck, it was empty. There were no boxes anywhere. There was no sign of anyone who unloaded the truck. And when he asked the fellow from the house about it, the man just said, "Thank you for your delivery. Have a nice day. Goodbye." So we've had stories like that of unusual things that don't have a good explanation. And we know now that the mountain gets deliveries on Thursdays. So other questions, good questions. What else you got?